What happens when a beloved country music superstar sits down with television's most controversial talk show panel and everything goes wrong? The moment Blake Shelton faces off against The View's most outspoken hosts turns into one of the most explosive daytime television confrontations ever. This isn't just another interview gone off track, it shows how fast things collapse when egos collide and tempers rise. The morning began like any other at The View Studios in New York City. Blake Shelton, coming off a new album release and a successful tour, was set to appear on the show to talk about his music and life after leaving The Voice. What should have been a simple promotional appearance quickly turned into something far darker as the hosts pushed the discussion toward politics instead of entertainment. From the moment Shelton stepped on set, the tension was clear. Joy Behar sat with a sharp, expectant look, while Whoopi Goldberg maintained her stern expression. The other panelists seemed to sense that something volatile was building behind the usual daytime TV presentation. The interview opened with forced smiles and polite laughter. Shelton, dressed casually, appeared relaxed as he talked about his new songs, touring experiences, and a few light stories from the road. The audience responded well to his down-to-earth personality, but the hosts had a different plan beneath their professional surface. So Blake, Joy Behar began, her tone shifting immediately. You've been vocal about your political views. With everything happening in the country, what are your thoughts on the more controversial issues we're facing? Her words landed like a challenge, and Shelton quickly realized this wasn't the interview he expected. He adjusted in his seat, drawing on media training to navigate what was becoming a minefield. Well, Joy, I've always felt that music should bring people together. I try to focus on entertaining people and giving them something positive to connect with. His answer was calm and measured, steering towards safer ground. But Behar didn't follow. She leaned in, eyes narrowing. That's a nice sentiment, Blake, but don't you think celebrities have a responsibility to speak out about injustice? With millions of fans, shouldn't you be more vocal about the issues that matter? The tension sharpened. Shelton's jaw tightened slightly, his hands clasping in his lap. I think everyone is entitled to their own opinions. I'm not going to act like an expert on every political issue just because I sing for a living. I respect my fans enough to let them decide for themselves. Whoopi Goldberg, silent until now, cut in suddenly. But Blake, that's the problem. Pretending we can stay neutral while people are suffering. Your silence says a lot about where you really stand. The accusation hit hard. Shelton's relaxed posture faded, and the charm he was known for started to crack. I'm sorry, but you're making big assumptions about me based on what I haven't said, not what I have. That doesn't seem fair. Sensing an opening, the other panelists joined in. One questioned old social media posts. Another brought up comments he supposedly made years earlier, comments taken out of context and reshaped into a narrative. It was clear this wasn't an interview. It was an ambush, carried out with calculated precision. Shelton's publicist, standing off to the side, shifted nervously as she watched her client being targeted on what was supposed to be a friendly morning show. The audience, excited at first, began murmuring uneasily as the situation unfolded. Look, Shelton said, his voice taking on a warning edge, familiar to anyone who knew his Oklahoma background. I came here to talk about music and maybe share a laugh with your viewers. I didn't agree to be lectured about my personal beliefs or have my character questioned based on your assumptions about who you think I am. But Joy Behar pressed on, her voice rising as she continued her criticism. Character, Blake, that's exactly what we're talking about. When you stay silent while marginalized communities are under attack, when you refuse to use your platform to speak out, that tells us everything we need to know about your character. The studio fell silent. The tension was thick. Shelton's face reddened, and he gripped the arms of his chair until his knuckles turned white. This was no longer about politics. It had become personal, directed at someone who came in good faith to promote his work and connect with fans. What happened next set the tone for one of daytime television's most dramatic moments. As Shelton reached his breaking point, his voice hardened, his accent deepening with anger. Now hold on just a damn minute, he said, cutting through the room. You don't know a thing about me. You sit here in your bubble judging people you've never met, acting like you're some moral authority. That's rich coming from someone who makes a living tearing people down on national TV. Joy Behar flushed red, her expression tightening. Excuse me, I'm holding you accountable, Blake. That's what journalists do. We ask the hard questions your fans won't ask. Her tone dripped with condescension as she leaned back, confident in her stance. But Shelton was done holding back. The media-trained politeness was gone, replaced by someone who had clearly been pushed too far. Journalist, that's what you call this. He shot back. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a coordinated hit job. You invited me here under false pretenses, and now you're trying to force me into saying what you want so you can go viral. The reaction on the panel made it clear his words had struck a nerve. Whoopi Goldberg stepped in, trying to regain control. Nobody's trying to bully you. We're talking about responsibility and using your platform for good. If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. Shelton let out a bitter, humorless laugh. Responsibility. How about the responsibility to treat your guests with basic respect? How about having an honest conversation instead of setting up a political trap? You lecture me about my platform while using yours to ambush people who don't agree with you. The tension hit its peak. The audience sat in stunned silence, watching what should have been light entertainment turn into something harsh and personal. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of the unraveling scene. Another panelist jumped in. Blake, what we're trying to understand is how someone with your influence claims to care about people while staying silent on issues that directly affect them. Don't you see how that looks hypocritical? Shelton's eyes flashed with real anger. Hypocritical. You want to talk about hypocritical? Sitting here pretending to care while you tear apart anyone who doesn't follow your political line. You talk about marginalized communities, but what about the millions of Americans in small towns and rural areas you ignore and dismiss? What about their struggles and their perspectives? His words lingered in the air, and the silence that followed revealed the panel's inability to acknowledge any viewpoint outside their own. Joy Behar recovered first, her voice openly hostile. Oh, so now you're playing the victim. Poor Blake Shelton, the multimillionaire country star being oppressed by mean liberal women asking tough questions. Her mockery was unmistakable, and it was exactly the wrong approach with someone who already felt cornered. Shelton's expression hardened, and when he spoke, his voice carried a quiet intensity, more threatening than a raised tone. You know what, Joy? You just showed everyone exactly who you are. This isn't about politics or justice or any principle you claim to stand for. This is about you feeling superior to people you think you're above. Whoopi tried again to calm things down, but only made it worse. Blake, I think you're being unfair. We're not attacking you personally, we're questioning your positions on important issues. But her words sounded hollow after the personal jabs and condescension that had defined the entire exchange. Shelton shook his head. Unfair? You've been attacking me personally since I sat down. You questioned my character, my integrity, my values based on your own assumptions. And now you call this legitimate journalism. The situation was spiraling fast. The producers were surely panicking as the show slipped into complete chaos. But the cameras continued recording every tense moment. Another panelist tried to lecture Shelton about privilege and being an ally, only fueling the fire. Shelton's response was immediate and sharp. Don't you lecture me about privilege while you sit in your Manhattan studio, disconnected from the real world. You want to talk responsibility? How about taking responsibility for the divisive rhetoric you push every day? How about owning the polarization you claim to oppose? The comment hit hard, and Joy Behar dropped any remaining professionalism. You know what your problem is, Blake? You can't handle being challenged. You're so used to your fans stroking your ego that you can't deal with anyone questioning your comfortable little worldview. It was a pointed personal attack, meant to wound, but Shelton didn't back down. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on Behar. My problem is that I trusted you to have an honest conversation, and instead I walked into an ambush. My problem is giving you the benefit of the doubt when I should have known better. At this point, there was no going back. Both sides were openly hostile, and any hint of civility had vanished. What happened next shocked everyone in the studio, and created a moment that would be replayed for years. Behar, apparently encouraged by her co-host's silence, went for what she seemed to believe was the final blow. You know what, Blake? Maybe the issue isn't that we're asking tough questions. Maybe the issue is that your time is up. Country music is changing. America is changing. And maybe there's no room for people with your outdated views anymore. The words hit the room like a physical impact. The audience gasped, and even some panelists looked uncomfortable. But Behar continued. Maybe it's time you step aside and let artists with more progressive values take the lead. Maybe your fans deserve better than someone stuck in the past. The studio went silent. Shelton sat completely still, his face a mask of restrained fury as he absorbed what had just been said on national television. The insult was so personal and so unprofessional that even the crew seemed stunned. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. You know what, Joy? You just proved everything I suspected about you and this show. You don't care about real conversations. You don't care about understanding different perspectives. You just want to tear down anyone who doesn't fit inside your narrow little worldview. He paused, looking around the table at each host with open contempt. You talk about progress and change, but what you're really doing is silencing anyone who doesn't think exactly like you. You've turned what should be a platform for open dialogue into a weapon to attack people whose only offense is being different from you. Whoopi Goldberg, realizing things had gone too far, even for their standards, tried to rein things in. Blake, emotions are high. Maybe we can step back, but Shelton cut her off with a sharp gesture. No, Whoopi, we're past that. Your colleague just told me on national television that there's no place for people like me in America anymore. She just told millions of viewers, my fans deserve better than me. So don't pretend this is about emotions. This is about showing your true colors. The tension in the studio was suffocating. The audience sat in stunned silence, many clearly uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. This had gone beyond entertainment or heated debate. It had turned into a live character attack. Joy Behar, instead of backing down, doubled down. Well, maybe if the shoe fits. Blake, maybe if you feel attacked, it's because somewhere inside you know there's some truth in what I'm saying. Maybe you should think about why you're so defensive about your beliefs. That was the breaking point. Shelton's remaining composure snapped. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly across the floor, the sound echoing through the silent room. "That's it," he said, his voice carrying the full weight of his anger. "I'm done with this circus. I came here in good faith to talk about my music and connect with fans. Instead, I walked into a planned ambush by a group of bullies who think they're morally superior to everyone else." He began removing his microphone, his movements controlled despite the fury in his voice. "You want to know what's really outdated? Treating people like garbage and hiding behind some noble cause to excuse it. Acting like disagreeing with you makes someone a bad person who deserves public humiliation." The host sat in silence as he continued his cutting critique. "You talk about values and responsibility, but where are your values when it comes to treating your guests with basic decency? Where is your responsibility to have honest conversations instead of orchestrating hit jobs?" He tossed his microphone onto the table, the sound echoing through the studio. "You know what's really tragic? You had a chance to bridge divides, to bring people together through real dialogue. Instead, you used your platform to bully and attack someone who came here with an open heart." Joy tried to respond. "Blake, if you can't handle no," Shelton interrupted, his voice firm. "You don't get to spin this. You don't get to pretend this is about me not handling criticism. This is about you showing the country exactly who you are, under all that righteous talk." He looked directly into the camera, addressing the viewers rather than the panel. "Folks, what you saw here is everything wrong with our national conversation right now. I wasn't invited here to talk. I was invited to be torn apart for the crime of thinking differently." The moment carried undeniable weight. A man who had been targeted and insulted was now exposing the behavior of those trying to tear him down. The hosts, once confident in their approach, now looked small and petty. "The sad part," Shelton continued, disappointment in his voice, "is that there are real issues in this country that deserve serious discussion. But instead of having them, you'd rather score cheap political points by attacking anyone who doesn't fit your worldview." He turned to leave, the impact of the moment sinking into the room. This wasn't just a celebrity having a rough interview. It was a clear pushback against the culture of media attacks. "You know what's not outdated," he said, turning back once more. "Treating people with respect, having honest conversations, building bridges instead of burning them. Those values will never go out of style, no matter how hard you try to shame people for holding them." With that, Blake Shelton walked off the set, leaving behind stunned hosts, a silent audience, and a moment that would be remembered for years. He entered the studio as a musician promoting his work and left as someone who had taken a stand for dignity and respectful dialogue in a hostile media environment. The silence that followed said more than words ever could about what had just taken place.